In this video, I'm going to talk about the affirmative that Marlborough is going to read at their own tournament. So the Marlborough affirmative is pretty close to a whole res resolution affirmative. So the plan says states ought to ban the development, production, and use of weapons that lack meaningful human control over targeting and decisions to kill humans. In my opinion, that is a super fancy way of saying the whole resolution, but it has some intricacies to it. So I think that you should treat this a lot like you would a whole res affirmative, but just that it uses this meaningful human control terminology, and that is how they phrase and invoke the legal standard of their ban in order to ensure that autonomous capacities are banned. So they specifically also say that this meaningful human control allows for norm creation that allows for a ban to be effective. So the other reason that they might be saying this is that this is their specific way of answering the circumvention, you can't enforce this, people lie, cheat, and steal type of thing. So let's start at the top of the Marlborough affirmative. So their first contention or advantage is about automated warfare. It says that lethal autonomous weapons, there's an arms race, and that a bunch of countries are going to develop these weapons inevitably. Seems like pretty similar to the way almost every team is reading this type of advantage. It says that through this process, lethal autonomous weapons cause war and escalation, and then specifically talks about terrorism. So maybe they'll read a terrorism impact. All right, escalation causes nuclear war. This is pretty standard. We've seen this in a lot of different affirmatives that we've seen, even in our own like whole res affirmatives. We say this, and then they specifically say lethal autonomous weapons terrorism, and that we need a ban in order to get rid of terrorist acquisition. So we're going to have a specific answer to terrorists acquiring and getting these lethal autonomous weapons. And you know, I don't really think that this is a groundbreaking contention, but it just talks about how terrorists would use them, that groups like ISIL have wanted to use them, and that it would make their attacks far more dangerous. So this seems like a pretty decent terrorism argument that we have to answer. The second contention that they have is LOAC, or Law of Armed Conflict. Basically, this is going to say that specifically lethal autonomous weapons violate this principle under the rule of law, and that this is a specific law of war that lethal autonomous weapons would violate because they are not self-regulated. So they say that this is specifically important and that we need to have a ban right now because it's key to stop emerging new technologies. So a lot of the lethal autonomous weapon literature says that laws is a type of new emerging technology that we're going to have over the next 15 or 20 years, and that by banning laws, we set a precedent for future emerging technologies, and that those are equally or worse dangerous than laws are. So that is why we would need to do a ban in this type of way that would create this type of, as their qua evidence says, legal clarity. And then they say that we need these type of norms in order to deal with nanotech. Nanotech, probably one of these emerging technologies that I was talking about, and that we need to regulate laws and have international law for laws in order to deal with future things down the road, such as nanotechnology, like this piece of evidence says. And then I'm sure they have a nanotech impact. So nanotech, a type of emerging tech, they stop that by doing the plain text that we already went over in the beginning of the video, and then they say specifically why that's important. So that is the Marlborough affirmative, kind of just a pretty spicy version of the whole res affirmative with some things that make it a lot more strategic than the whole res AF. So that is the Marlborough AF, and we have a couple more videos. So I'll see you in the next part.